It is said that the simplest thing is wiser than a man. So however wise or however mighty a person may be, he is like a ship without a rudder if he is without God. Spoken by Emperor Haile Selassie I. Therefore, if you believe that the grandson of God is God himself, then you are rudderless. Because I don't understand how people cannot come to the conclusion that Jesus is the grandson of Jacob, whom is Israel, whom is God, considering there are no 12 tribes of Jesus, and neither did Jesus give Moses the Ten Commandments. So if Jesus didn't give Moses the Ten Commandments, that automatically makes him not God. So let's read who God's favorite son is. And Israel, whom is God, whom is Jehovah, whom is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his other sons. Another Bible would say, and Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, including Jesus. So who is Israel? It is mentioned in Psalm 135. You are standing in the house of Jehovah, in the courtyards of the house of our God. Praise Jah, for Jehovah is good. Make melody to his name. So what is his name? For Jah has chosen even Jacob for himself, Israel for his special property. So we just saw that Israel, whom is Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his sons. So who is Jacob? Jacob became father to Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born. So it goes from Jacob to Joseph to Jesus. What is so hard? So remember this. Remember the deeds of the fathers, which they did in the generations, and received. Was not Abraham found faithful? Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and became Lord of Egypt. Phineas, our father, because Phineas is just another name for Jah, he was deeply zealous and he received the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. In other words, that's God himself. While Jesus, also known as Joshua, because he fulfilled the command, became a judge in Israel. So Jesus is just another name for Joshua, which is just another name for Jeshua, which is just another name for Yeshua. But either way, Jesus is supposed to be here together with Moses, and the same Jesus has a grandchild. So let's read. This Jesus was the son of Sirach and the grandchild to Jesus. So in other words, Jesus had a son named Sirach, and Sirach named his son Jesus. And this happened in the latter times, after the people had been led away captive and called home again, and almost after all the prophets. Now his grandfather Jesus, as he himself witnesseth, was a man of great diligence and wisdom. And the first Jesus died. In other words, the grandfather Jesus died, the son of Joseph. And then he left his book onto Sirach, his son, who left it onto his own son, Jesus. In other words, there are going to be two Jesus together at the same time. So let's read what is written in Ecclesiasticus. So Jesus, the son of Nav, so as you see, at the beginning of Ecclesiasticus, it lets you know that there are two Jesus. And it also lets you know that Jesus, the son of Naz, was a successor of Moses. According to his name, was made great for the saving of the elect of God. Remember, Haile Selassie is the elect of God, the elect of himself. And he has a son called Moses, also goes by the name of Solomon, who has a son named Jesus. So in the time of Moses, also he did a work of mercy. And he found in the sight of the Lord, and he followed the mighty one. In other words, Jesus is together with the mighty one. And if you don't know, Moses is Solomon. So, and as when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire came down from heaven and consumed the sacrifices. Even so prayed Solomon also, and the fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offerings. And Moses said, because the sin offering was not to be eaten, it was consumed. So Solomon kept those 8 days. In other words, Moses is Solomon, Solomon is Moses. And we know that from the first book of Esdras, because we know there's only one holy ark of the covenant. So the holy ark of the covenant was made in the house that King Solomon, the son of David, had built. In other words, Solomon, who goes by the name of Moses, built the first ark. And when he's here at the end of time. So of the sons of Jesus, the son of Josedek. Remember, Jesus had sons, one named Ezer and another one named Sirach. And they are here together at the end of times. So Esdras brought the law of Moses that was given of the Lord God of Israel, to hear on the law of the first day of the 7th month. So who was there? The God Most High, God of hosts, Almighty. And all the people answered, also Jesus. So Jesus is together with Moses and the Holy Mighty One at the end of times. And how do we know this? Second book of Esdras. I, Esdras, received the charge of the Lord upon the Mount Oreb, and Mount Oreb is just another name for Sinai, that I should go on to Israel, and I came upon them, and they sought me not, and despised the commandment of the Lord. In other words, the commandment of the Lord was given to the people at the end of time. So look forward for your shepherds, for he is nigh at hand, that shall come in the end of the world. Be ready for the reward of the kingdom, for the everlasting light shall shine upon you forevermore. In other words, the kingdom is supposed to be here at the end of times. That's why it's mentioned Solomonic dynasty comes at the end of times. So at the end of times, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya are going to join up together. So after many days thou shalt be visited in the latter years, that thou shalt come in the land that is brought back from the sword against the mountains of Israel. And there you will find Sheba. And she will say, are you here to carry away silver and gold and to take a great spoil? And she's speaking to Russia and her allies who are going to come into Ethiopia with her army from the remote part of the north to look forward to the Most High. So let's watch. And watch who's Russia is down with and what they're lying. Notice.
Right, from 500 million to 1.27 billion. That's 2.5 times. Over 50 years. Over 50 years. Chinese women did not have, on average, have 5 children because of the one-child policy.
Yes.
Because of the Great Famine. Because of the Great Famine, tens of millions of people died. Because of Cultural Revolution. So China, from one political movement to another, and then to almost 4 decades of single-child policy. There's no way Chinese women had 5 kids. Actually, the average fertility rate for each woman was 1.7 for the 30-year from 1990 to 2020. Okay, Chinese average fertility rate is probably 2 from the 50 years. So it's a mathematical question. There's no way Chinese women gave birth to 5 kids.
In other words, don't believe everything you hear. Remember to follow God and know this. Malcolm X said, I had the pleasure of meeting His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia. He is truly a great man and a great leader. The greatest leader in the world. Why? Because he is God himself. So let's watch. The King of Zion.
He became governor of the province. In 1928, he led the troops that killed Empress Zoditu's husband, who was not of royal blood, and became regent. He became emperor on November 2nd, 1930, and was crowned Haile Selassie I, King of Kings, King of Zion, conquering lion of the seed of Judah, power of the Trinity.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. And notice, the kings of Zion are the kings of Ethiopia. He's literally the king of Ethiopia. And the king of Ethiopia has the oldest language in the world.
Gave the world one of its oldest written alphabets. Why isn't it in history books beside Latin or Greek? Long before Europe standardized its alphabets, Ethiopia carved its own, the Ge'ez script. Over 2,000 years old.
Over 7,000 years old. It is literally considered the father language. You're not going to find an older language in the world. Why? Because Ethiopia is the first civilization. In the beginning was the word, and it was not in Hebrew or Arabic or Latin or Greece. It was in Ethiopian.
It's still used today in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church and traces back to the ancient kingdom of Aksum, one of Africa's great empires. What makes Ge'ez remarkable is its independence. It wasn't borrowed or adapted from another civilization. It evolved in Africa with unique syllabic forms that influenced later languages like Amharic and Tigrinya. While Greek and Latin dominate classrooms, Ge'ez quietly shaped religious texts, royal decrees, and early literature. It even encoded...
All Bibles are translated out of the Ethiopian original tongues, which was written in Ge'ez.
included some of the earliest Christian manuscripts outside Europe. So why don't we study it? Maybe because it challenges the old narrative that literacy and civilization flowed only from the Mediterranean outward. The truth is, Africa was writing its own story the whole time.
Which they rearranged and changed up. So they have you thinking that God came from the tribe of Judah, which is a pure lie. For God is the father of Judah. So what does it say about Judah? Judah is also unruly against God, even against the Holy One who is faithful. In other words, stop saying Jesus from the tribe of Judah. Jesus is the grandson of God. And notice about the church. Until 1974, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church was the official religion of the Ethiopian Empire. But then in 1974, the church kept quiet throughout the early stages of the revolution until September 11, the day before the overthrow of the emperor. That evening, they blessed the revolution in progress, and the church and the crown was destroyed. Furthermore, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church did not condemn the illegal killings of 23 on November 1974, when 60 Ethiopian dignitaries, all of them members of the church, were massacred. In other words, follow Jah, not man. And know who he is, and know who he went against him.
Your Imperial England and France abandoned Ethiopia to Mussolini.